you attract whatever you are. And they were like, Mom, we'll gladly give you up for 30 days to have you for the rest of our life. Because the negative chatter tried to get in my head a little bit, like, really, Tracy, why don't you get a real job? How are you going to take care of your family? You suck. All the things that we say to ourselves in recovery, we tell our truth. We live in truth. To thine own self be true is, what I live by.
Okay, hi everyone. I am so honored and privileged to be able to interview my friend Tracy O'Malley. I actually, just recently met you, Tracy. I remember it last August at our company event, and then again at another event, a smaller event in Chicago in October. I really felt this connection with you, and your story is so fantastic. And where my purpose, my tagline, I guess, is connecting women and connecting them to their power, their purpose, and their virtue. I really felt that you were the perfect person to interview for this because your story is so compelling. And I'll just say, from what I know, and you can fill in the blanks for what we're missing, but from what I've heard from you, you were really similar to me in the fact that you introverted, kind of preferred your isolation and really comfortable by yourself, that you found a reason and actually a need, a real human need to connect with other people, and worked through challenges. I know what the challenges are when you feel like being by yourself. You need to connect to people. There's a lot of internal stuff that goes on, and I know it's hard and it's easier just to slip back into pattern, but you have taken that and ran with it, and it's really become, to me, the most powerful part of who you are, and your life has changed dramatically because of it. And so I would just really love for you to share your story with us. I've been so touched, and I know you'll touch so many people.
Well, it's interesting because, where that introverted isolation came from, I tried to put my finger on what that was. And, I've done a lot of work on myself in the almost 44 years I've been around. So I've always been one that likes to work on myself, but I like to do it alone. And, I grew up in an alcoholic home, and I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of thing, but when you do, like, your trust issues go completely out the window because you never know what you're coming home to when you grow up that way. It could be a party, it could be, plates being thrown, holes in the wall, you just never know. And so, if you can't trust what's happening under your own roof, it's really hard to trust anybody else. And so I think that's where my isolation came in, and where I like to keep to myself. When I'm around people, I do okay, but it's not my preference. This is before. And, over the years, I was an overachiever, perfectionist, because that didn't make waves in my home. If you did everything right, there was no conflict. And I did at least my part to try and keep the conflict at bay. And, that developed into eating disorders, alcohol problems. I still was an overachiever. I still did really good at whatever I did, but there were these things that, for a long time they were hidden. Even the alcohol was kind of, touch and go. Not everybody kind of knew it was an issue until it became a huge issue at the end. And, I moved through my life. I got married very young to get away from that life. I moved 3,000 miles away from Chicago to a different life. And, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I got married, had 2 kids back to back, which they're amazing, and I love them. And for about 6 or 7 years, things were going great. And, because I was so consumed with being a parent and a mom, and it was everything to me. And, all the other things were at bay, but slowly but surely I was becoming more numb, disconnected. And then my husband started working in a different area than he had his whole life, and the disconnect became even more, which eventually led to a divorce about 8 years ago. And, I was in my early 30s, a single mom, and, I didn't even know what I was going to do with that. And, back to isolation, back to, turning inward. I live in Gilbert, Arizona, which is a beautiful place to live, but it is comprised 80% of families, like, your traditional families. And here it is, this little divorcee in the middle of Gilbert. It just felt so uncomfortable. And so I retreated even more. And, I had a business with my husband. It was in the car industry for 10 years. And, even after we were divorced, we worked together, which I don't recommend. It was very stressful. And when the economy took a hit, I decided to close the doors on the business. Overnight, I lost 85% of my business. And instead of trying to hustle it out with my ex-husband, I decided to shut the doors on it. Thankfully, even during a tough economy, I was very employable and had many connections in the car business. And that's how I ended up in the corporate end of the car industry, pulling me away from my home, 2.5 hours a day of a commute. Child support stopped at that point. So the sole financial responsibility was on my shoulders. Shortly after that, we lost our family home, the home my children grew up in, had to give up our family dogs to move into a rental home. And I was pulled away, and my kids at the time were in junior high, which it's such a hard age anyway. And then for all these changes to happen for them and me, it was really, really stressful. And although I was great at my job, I was really good at it. Of course, the type A overachiever, and especially in the car business, I mean, the ratio of men to women is about 1,000 to 1. So you have to be kind of tough as nails, take no crap kind of girl. Otherwise you'll get eaten alive. And so I loved that role, as a way to put up the body armor, put on the masks, and go to work. And eventually it just caught up to me. I couldn't do it anymore. I was slowly just, I felt like I sold my soul to do this job. And it wasn't until the summer of 2012 when I got the call from my dad. It was a week after Father's Day. And he said he was really, really sick and I needed to come home to Chicago because they didn't give him much time. And my dad was not one to beat around the bush at all. And I was like, well, what does that mean? He goes, you need to come now. And so I said, okay, making the arrangements to get my kids handled. Single parent, you got to have all your ducks in order, and tell my job, which I worked on commission. So I knew part of my income was going to be gone to go away. So that was stressful on top of it. And literally 10 days later, my dad lost his battle to cancer. Thankfully, I made it home with a few hours to spare. So I got to say goodbye and be there with him. But it was really just eye-opening of life is too short. That cliche we throw around really came up and smacked me upside the head. And, I stayed in Chicago for a few weeks to kind of get things in order, to deal with the dysfunctional family dynamics that is a good Irish Catholic family. And, just handle things and handle myself. And, although my employer was really amazing about giving me time off, I was really good at what I did. So they were like, when are you coming back? And, I remember sitting on the plane stressed out because, I needed the income. That commission was more than half my income. And, I vowed I was never going to be put in this position again, that I should have been just able to be there and grieve with my family, do what I needed to do without having to worry about this or that, have my kids with me the whole time. I couldn't do that. And so I vowed to never be put in that position again. And I came back very changed. I came back really changed and retreated and became more introverted. And it only took about 2 months for me to hit rock bottom. My coping mechanisms weren't so good. Alcohol came into full force, usually alone at the end. And in September, 2 months after my dad passed away, I made the decision that I needed to live a different kind of legacy than my dad did. My dad was a great man, but he was an alcoholic, an untreated one. And I didn't want that for my children. I didn't want them to go through this. And so I made the decision, a very hard decision, to put myself into rehab for alcoholism and my eating disorder, both, to get to the root of why I coped the way I did. And at 40 years old, that's what I did. I went in and told my kids that I'm doing this. And, I didn't screw up too bad because they were like, Mom, we'll gladly give you up for 30 days to have you for the rest of our life. And, I made the decision, and that's really what it comes down to. It's a decision to give this everything I had, to never waver from my efforts in fighting this disease, to, stay in this and to change the patterns of my family for many, many decades. It didn't just start with my parents. It goes many generations deep. And I was ready to break the cycle. And I was going to do it, and I was all in. And so I came home, and I was in a relationship at the time, which was very dysfunctional. He was an alcoholic as well, untreated. And so we lived together with my kids, and I came home. If you've seen the movie The Breakup, I mean, that's basically what I was living. It was just a mess, and that hung on for a little while. But on my 6-month sobriety day, I had picked up my 6-month sobriety chip that morning in March, and it was the day that I opened my box of Isogenics. The girl I used to work with had been talking about it, and we weren't really friends, but I wanted what she had, and I needed to feel good, because even though I was sober, physically I felt like a truck hit me every day. And she was sparkling and shining, and I was like, I want that, but then give me my box and leave me alone. And so I did. I basically ordered it and put it in my closet for about a week and a half. And on the morning of my 6-month sobriety date, I figured it was a good day to start my Isogenics. And so I did, telling no one. I didn't want anything to do with the business end of it. I wanted to be my introverted, Isa-closeted self. And I was, until day 4, when I came home and both my kids were like, what is going on with you, Mom? You're different. You're amazing. You're beautiful. You're shining. You know, my kids are teenagers. They don't really care what's going on with Mom, but they really did. They noticed something, you know. And I say it had been a rough couple years on all of them, you know. So for them to notice something that quickly, I knew there was something in it. And the man I was dating at the time, he came home too, and I hadn't told any of them. And he's like, what is going on with you? You look amazing. And so I took him over to my hidden closet, my Isa closet, behind the chips and salsa. I said, I don't even know what's in this, and I don't know if it's legal, but I will never be without this stuff pumping through my body. And it was that day that I remembered, you know, the girl that introduced me to it said, you know, there's a way to get these paid for. And I was like, whatever. And so I went to Google, looked up the company, and saw what they stood for: the integrity, the family, the values, the freedom, and all those resonated with me so deeply. And I watched the compensation plan, because I knew I was not going to shut up about this because of what had happened to me in 4 days. I had chased that feeling for 40 years, and I got it that quickly. And so I knew I was going to share it with whoever would listen, whether they paid me or not. So why not figure out how I get paid to do it? And when I saw the compensation plan, I got it right away. It made sense to me. I'm a numbers person. I always have been. And I was like, oh, thank goodness, because I didn't have a lot of friends. I cleaned out a lot of my social network. I'd pretty much taken my social network down to zero when I cleaned up my life, because the people I was hanging around with weren't good for me. And I saw the way the compensation plan was set up, and I could leverage the ones that I did know. It didn't just depend on me enrolling people and getting people. It was whoever the people that I brought along too. And I liked that, because I'm not a turn and burn kind of salesperson. I don't like to talk to people a ton. And, you know, the ones that I did talk to, they trusted me. So I didn't want to be that person either. And I actually drew out U plus 2, them plus 2 on day 4 in my kitchen, in the back of my AA book, to the boyfriend. I was like, can you believe this? Can you believe this is possible? And he goes, that's awesome. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm taking this all the way. And he's like, I believe you. And so that day I also found out there was an event coming to Phoenix in about a month. And so I immediately bought a ticket for it. And about 2 days before that event, my life got rocked. And, you know, when we make positive changes in our lives, not everybody gets on board. You know, I changed the rules on the people in my life. You know, all of a sudden this go with the flow, do whatever everybody else says to make everybody happy was fighting back, was taking charge of her life. And the people closest to me didn't like it, including one of my closest friends and the boyfriend. And on the same day, 2 days before that event, both of them walked out of my life. I came home to all the family pictures off the wall. The dog was gone and he was gone. And I was devastated. I mean, we shared the bills, we shared our life, we shared dreams. And within a moment's notice, it was all gone. And the old me would have turned inward even more, would have coped the way that she used to cope. But without those old coping mechanisms, I needed to rely on God and rely on my faith. And I had faith that was bigger than any of my fears. And I was scared. I was really scared. My kids were looking at me like, oh no, is this all going to derail now? And I looked at them both and I said, Mom's got this. I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. God's got us. And so I marched my butt down to that event all by myself, cried the entire way down. I mean, I literally had makeup all over my face. And as I was sitting in the parking lot, having, because the negative chatter tried to get in my head a little bit, like, really, Tracy, why don't you get a real job? How are you going to take care of your family? You suck. All the things that we say to ourselves. And, as I was sitting in the parking lot, that friend that walked out of my life sends this horrible text message to me telling me I'm a horrible mother. Who do I think I am? My kids should be ashamed that I'm their mom. Maybe I should rethink my recovery program because it's clearly not working for me. All those awful things that really could have derailed me. And I just, clicked delete and walked into the event by myself anyway. And I sat down and, I hid off in a corner, because I didn't want to talk to anybody and I was a mess. And this lady came down and sat next to me and she introduced herself and it was Betsy Frayne. And I said, I'm Tracy. She goes, oh, I know who you are. And I was a little freaked out because I'm in an organization and, as you know, and I didn't know this at the time, but now I know, when you all of a sudden you see volume popping up in your tree and things start happening, you try to find out where that's coming from. And she knew it was coming from me. So she found me at that event and sat with me the entire time. And it was the first time I told my story to one person. I couldn't believe I was telling it to a perfect stranger. And it felt so good. And I could see it move her. And I was like, okay, that felt good. That felt good. Because I was raised in a way you keep your secrets in the home. You let nobody know what's going on in your home. And here I was at this event with a couple hundred people talking to strangers about my story. And it was just really different. But I had to do that in recovery. That's where I learned it. In recovery, we tell our truth. We live in truth. To thine own self be true is, what I live by. And so here I was in this isogenics event doing that very thing. And I was like, holy moly, this isn't the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but okay, I'm going to do this anyway. And, Susan Sly and Lynn Hagedorn and Betsy and Cindy Hedges all spoke through me that day. And I knew I was leaving different. And I was going to wear my heart on a sleeve, be as open and honest, because my story isn't about me. And yes, you said you probably told your story a million times, and I do. And I'll keep telling it if it helps somebody, because it isn't about me anymore. I do heal a little bit more each time I tell it. So I do get something out of it. So I'm always happy to share it. But I know that for a long time, I felt like I was all alone and nobody could relate to me. And my experience, what I have found is that's quite the opposite, is the more I tell it, the more that people relate to it, the more that people can identify with what I was going through. And maybe they're feeling that at this very moment and they don't have the tools to push through it because it gets scary. It's comfortable to stay alone. It's comfortable to isolate. It's comfortable for nobody to hold you accountable because then you don't have to answer to anyone. And, what I have found is by me telling my story and what I've done to power through that, even when I'm scared, because I'm still scared telling my story here. Who knows who this, who's going to see this. But I know it's going to help more people than it's going to ever hurt me. And, I know God's got me. And if, I'm a deep believer in my faith. And if God is everything, then what the heck is there to be afraid of? So, I will just continue to keep putting it out there. And, over the course of the last 2.5 years, I cleaned house. My social network was 0 when I started this. And, I needed to clear that out to make room for the beautiful souls that were going to enter and all the friendships I've made. And, I never saw that coming. I just thought I was going to feel better. I really did. That's all I started this for, was to just physically feel better. And I received so much more. I have friends that I call family, and my kids have role models, not just me, that they look up to, that they are a part of this culture too. And that transformation is just beautiful because my kids are now coping with things. They're now 19 and almost 18, and the way they cope with life situations, because life is hard, and I tell everybody I talk to, life is like the ocean, and there isn't an amount of money that can fix everything in the world. It gives you freedom and choices, yes. However, life is like the ocean, and there's a period of the ocean where it's so peaceful and calm, and it's the most serene place on earth. But the waves always come. They always do. And sometimes they're bigger than others. And sometimes they come and knock you on your rear end. And, our job is just to learn how to surf a little bit better. So when the waves do come, we can pop up on that board and just ride it out instead of getting tossed under and pulled under the waves. And, that's what I'm here to do, is to teach people how to surf a little bit better. And, even my own children are surfing like rock stars now. And, they know the waves are coming, but they know that they can't control that. We can't control people, places, or things. We can only control our reactions to them. And there are sometimes we choose to not give anything any more power than it needs. And, the old me is a fighter. I'm a hardcore, type A red fireball that used to fight about everything. And now there are just some situations where, the more you fight back, even if you're right, it just gives it more power. And I just choose not to let that kind of energy into my life. And as a result, my life is so much less drama. It's a little weird because I was surrounded by drama, and I know you've been part of the same programs I have, as far as, you attract whatever you are. And I was surrounded by drama all the time. And that's probably because I was the biggest drama queen on the planet. And it's ironic now. I mean, my life's pretty boring. It's quiet and I like it. And I want to keep it that way because maybe I'm quiet and boring. But yeah, that's really just what I've done. I mean, there's lots of things I've done along the way, but that's the nuts and bolts of it. Yeah.
I have had like goosebumps the whole time we're talking, and they just like keep multiplying. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I just have one more question for you, because I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in our story that we feel like there's no way for us to like become something more or something better. So one of the things, besides the story you just shared, was the story that you shared of how now you connect with people. And you said, I can look out into this audience. I think there were like 800 people there. And the people that you knew that were your friends, you said, I know everything about them. Like, I know what drives them. And you were pointing out all different people, and you were mentioning that. And so my question about that was, like, how did you get to that place? How did you get to where you were able to have that connection with people instead of reverting to, I know this is possible, and I know, that I'm changing, but I'm not really sure how to connect to people. So all this, do you know what I'm trying to ask you? Like, what was it, and it may have been a series of many things, and it might be hard to explain, but what is it that allowed you to not only have the desire to connect with people, but actually the ability to do it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it started honestly in recovery. I mean, when you walk into the rooms of a recovery program, I mean, all bets are off. You're honest. And I mean, some of the stuff I hear in there is like, are you kidding me? I can't even believe that I'm hearing this. And all of a sudden you realize that everybody in the world, we're a lot more alike than we are different. And I became willing to expose myself, and I wanted to get to know people. I really did, because there's so much, I'm all about the masks. You've heard me talk about that. And for 40 years, I wore masks. If you wanted me to be the perfect wife, I was that, the perfect daughter, the perfect employee, the perfect mom. I could be anything you wanted me to be. And I got to the point where I didn't even know who I was. And I know I wasn't alone. And so when I made the decision, and honestly, it is all a decision, to be open and vulnerable. And, part of getting to know people is letting them get to know you as well. And by me sharing my story, I noticed how quickly, and it freaked me out a little bit, how quickly people were connecting with me and wanting to, like, they would meet me even though they hadn't met me, but they knew stuff about me. They'd heard me speak, and like, they'd come up to me and within 5 seconds they're crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? But I got that. The trust was, they trusted me immediately because I was so willing to go first and tell my story and be really exposed. I mean, the stuff I tell is pretty vulnerable. Most people in recovery don't talk about it, and that, I get it, but thank goodness I have a platform where I can do that. And it actually not only helps me, but helps thousands of other people. But I noticed the trust was there right away with them. And so because they trusted me, I wanted to hear their story and really care because, for 40 years, like I said, I put Band-Aids on every situation to try and feel better instead of getting to the real root of the issue. And although it worked for short periods of time, what I noticed was there was no longevity to anything I did. I mean, I'd be really good at stuff and then I'd bail. I'd be really good at something, I'd bail. I'd be really good in a relationship and I'd bail. And so I knew that getting to the root of things not only helped me, but would help anybody I talk to. So when I do truly want to connect with somebody because I want what's best for them, because I deeply care about people. And so I know getting to the root of their stuff and helping them work through that. And sometimes they're not even aware of what the heck they're saying. They're like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought of it that way. And I know that the chances of them having a healthier, more soul-filled life are greater if they get to the real issue. Yes, it's going to be messy and uncomfortable, but I promise them on the other side, there's this big, beautiful, bright light that, you can lay your head down on the pillow knowing you are your true self, and that, people were going to love you or not, and it's okay. I'm not everybody's favorite person, and I'm totally okay with that because some people aren't comfortable with getting uncomfortable, and I get that. But whoever I'm talking to, no matter if it's a stranger or, somebody I've met at an event or my own kids, they know that I'm digging deep because I love them and because I care so much about them. So my wanting to connect is because I care so much about people. There were some great people in my early days of sobriety when I was terrified that did that for me, that helped me really get to the root of things. And once you can clean up the wreckage of that past, it doesn't mean it changes things. It doesn't mean that it's going to all of a sudden make your life that much better, but you're going to have a different set of clear eyes that you can look at a situation. Yes, you could still get hurt when you open up your heart. Yes. I mean, I've been hurt a lot in the last 2.5 years exposing myself, but it's okay because it's helped a lot more people than I've been hurt, and I will keep doing it. But it really is a decision to care deeply about people and do whatever you can to help them. And because I've walked this path already, I know that it works. And I know because they trust me, they're more willing to do it because I am doing it right along with them. It's not one of those things where, people will do what you do, not what you say to do. And because I'm doing it every day, I work on me every day, and I'm very open and honest about it. They trust me and they're willing to do it too, because they know that I'll be right there with them. And so when you asked about getting to know people and the people in my team, or even people not on my team, I know many people's reasons for why they do what they do. And it truly is that connection. There's nothing better than looking somebody in the eyes and knowing what they want in life. And because life, again, the waves are going to come. And when those waves come, I can help them on that surfboard and be like, remember when you said, this is why you wanted to do this. Now let's hop on this board and just ride this wave out instead of, getting sucked under. And they're like, okay, I can push through. If you can do it, I can do it. And I will keep doing that because I do care about people, because when you have people that are happy and want to serve others, the world really is just a much more beautiful place. And it's hard for negativity to be in that kind of area. Negative people have a hard time being around me because I will call them out. Even at that event in Chicago, there was a girl sitting behind me, and it was the moment when they were kind of going through the script. And, if somebody was off, like even by a word, it was like next. And the girl behind me was losing her stuff because we weren't kicking her off the stage, and she was being rude. And I literally turned around. I go, are you kidding me right now? Like, are you listening to yourself? Like, you are being mean. And she was like taken back. And the old me would have just kind of tolerated that, pretended like she wasn't saying it. But I'm like, I don't want that kind of energy anywhere near me. And she was not happy with me, but these are my values. That is not nice. And no, we won't have that. And I did it with love. I wasn't like mean or anything, but I never would have done that before. And I felt good about doing it because everybody around me was watching that. and they were thinking what I was about to say. And so again, leading by example, going first builds trust. And when you build trust with people, not only will they go to the ends of the earth for you, but with you. And I know I can use that in my life. And, I've had to call in the troops when things were hard in my life. And, like I shared this weekend, as a single parent, there are certain roles. I'm not a guy. There are certain roles I can't fill the same way. I mean, I do my best and I do a really, really, really good job. But sometimes my son especially needs a man of faith to talk to. And thank goodness I have surrounded myself with an army of them. And it's only because I was willing and I made the decision to open up my heart and get to know people. And I'm so grateful for that. It's worth every part of it, even the hard times. So
thank you so much. So just a couple of things as you were talking, because one of my whole reasons for doing this blog and this platform that I'm choosing to follow is because I believe so deeply that people are more alike than they are different. And I feel like there's a lot of people that don't realize that. I feel like there's a lot of people that feel alone because they think they're the only one. So that's kind of the voice, the platform I'm trying to take, just with the travels I make and the people I meet. And I knew that you were the perfect person to interview. So when you were talking, I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly that. And then the decision, I'm all about decision. Once you decide something and you truly decide something, nothing is going to keep you from that. So that why, and that, I love this surfboard analogy, especially my husband Dave is a surfer. His business is actually big waves. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And so I'm not a surfer, but the analogy still was perfect. I loved it. And the ocean, all of that. And the last thing that you said that really is something I'm in the process of learning. So just hearing you say it like re-solidified my decision and my drive to continue my own journey is that you don't reach people, you don't help people because you've already arrived and you already are that, but that you are arriving and that you're being that to the best of your ability. And so my own life, I don't necessarily have all the drama, and I've always felt like it's hard to reach people because I have had this perfect life, right? But I'm realizing that it's this perfection, this perceived perfection, and I didn't necessarily feel like I was that, but I felt perceived that way. So it was like this wall, and people didn't want to connect to me because they felt maybe less than. So by me opening up and sharing my own journey, I'm finding connections with people that I didn't believe could be possible and could exist. And so just you solidified that for me. And the only reason I'm saying that is because maybe there's someone on this other side, where life seems, it has the appearance of being everything but dramatic, So, but there's always something on the inside, and we need to open up and share that. So yeah, that was really powerful for me, and hopefully for everyone I don't even think hopefully, for everyone that will be watching, I know it's going to be powerful. So thank you so much.
And the last thing I want to say about that is, for a long, long time, I felt alone. And quite honestly, I created that environment. I chose to be alone. I chose to isolate. And I want anybody out there that feels really alone, know it's a choice, because we have a beautiful community that is more than willing to love the heck out of you. Don't make the choice to stay isolated, because isolation is the thief of joy. We were put on this earth to connect with each other and to love each other. That is what we're truly here for. So make the choice to get out of your comfort zone, reach out, ask for help. That was so hard for me. It's still hard for me because I was also perceived as having everything together. And I was always taught that asking for help was weakness. And it's quite opposite. That's strength. Knowing when you need help or backup or just anything is a strength. And we always do better as a team. We really, really do, in any part of your life, in parenting, in career-wise, anything, faith, whatever. An army is way better than going solo. So know that you have a choice, and we have anybody. I know Carrie and myself, if you ever need a friend, we're here. So